Good afternoon. Today is the 28th of March. It's about 4:47 in the afternoon, and this is the Streets and Sidewalks Committee for the City of Troy. And to my right is Councilwoman Linsney, and to my left is Councilman Brock Heath, and I'm Bob Phillips, the Chairman of the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. And today we're here to take a look at a staff report for the council, for a recommendation to council to authorize a resolution of necessity regarding repair and replacement of certain sidewalks in 2017 replacement program phase 10. Mr. Titterington? Or?
Sure. We are asking that you authorize the resolution of necessity as the first step in the process for our annual sidewalk replacement program. This is phase 10 of at least an 11-year program, because I knew we did an A and a B in at least 1 year. The area that we are looking at would consist of 65 parcels. It is generally speaking in the southeast area, South Mulberry, South Clay Street, along South Crawford Street, and East West Street, East Ross Street. Then there are a couple of others, and these are sections and not the entire lengths. And as always, where there are handicap ramps, we will replace those to the current federal standards at our cost. We are asking for a resolution of necessity. We are not asking that it be done as an emergency.
Okay. A side issue, not directly related to this, but sidewalk replacement and stuff. When are we tentatively looking at downtown on the West Main Street and the 200 and 300 blocks and Plum and Cherry and those side streets in there? And just as a unrelated but sort of related.
The West Main project that will probably be multi-phases would be a good time for us to look at that. That would start from Cherry Street, moving west to the interstate. That is the project that they are looking at and designing right now.
Okay. Directly related to this, I have no questions. Either one.
No, I have no questions on this. Thank you.
Any other council folks, questions or concerns about this? In the audience, anyone? Okay. Recommendation?
Move forward.
Yeah, move forward.
Okay. It's unanimous recommendation of the Streets Sidewalks Committee to move forward as staff is requesting on this. Any other items to come before the Streets and Sidewalks Committee?
I think there's one more, isn't there?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, one more.
Complete street.
Oh, is that a setup question?
Yeah.
I guess it was, huh? And so at your last council meeting, we did have some discussion and questions from a resident or a group of residents, one of whom was the spokesperson. So we thought this would be a good opportunity, knowing that next meeting is the third reading of the Complete Streets policy, to clarify, answer the questions and clarify and hopefully reassure the council that, number one, the questions and issues that were brought up, they were very good, rational questions. And number two, that with apologies, knowing that the map that we included was extremely small, some of the details that we should have pointed out and are on the Complete Streets map did in fact address his concerns. Assistant Development Director Tim Davis has been coordinating the Complete Streets policy development. So he is here, and I'd like to ask him, with your permission, to come up and maybe guide you through the finer points of that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Unfortunately, we had a shortage of easels today, so we did our best to makeshift an easel board for the map for anybody to view that. I did want to reach out a little bit and talk about some of the background about the Complete Streets, and then kind of go into the information by Mr. Schilling at the council meeting on Monday night. First, Complete Streets, of course, it's designed to, it's an effort to promote healthier lifestyles, safe passages on the roads by not only vehicles, but pedestrians and cyclists. And so this is kind of a nationwide effort that has been undertaken probably since the mid-2000s. To date, there's 900 communities that basically have adopted a complete streets policy. There's 16 municipalities in Ohio, and 7 of those are under the populations of 50,000, which are similar size to us. And they have adopted a complete streets policy. So we're not alone in this effort. There's a lot of communities that have done this or are doing this now. Going back to some of the points Mr. Schilling made, I know one of the things he talked about, and I'll kind of address his points as I had them written down. One was to funnel people off of West Main Street, and we couldn't agree more with his comments. We've actually done that. If you take a look at the map, we have red dots basically from Interstate 75 to the west, and the red dots kind of denote a proposed trail, which is not a share road, a separate trail. And once again, that was done to get people off the streets, cyclists in that area with traffic volumes, the rates of speeds, things of that nature. We felt it was safer to get them off the street, so we did just that. So once again, from 75 to the west, we're not proposing anybody right on the streets in those areas. As a matter of fact, if you look at West Main Street and you follow it down, we do have share roads on there from I-75 into the east towards downtown and throughout East Main. But if you want to take an alternate path, we also have those as well. You could actually avoid West Main Street altogether and still get from east to west with the different paths that we have chosen. And one of the things I do want to point out on the trail connectivity map, or the complete streets map, is we didn't identify every residential road because they're essentially all the same. I would think most of us would agree that going into a residential neighborhood, there's no difference from Maple Crest, Skylark, those type of roads. They're all pretty similar and pretty safe. So we've just identified some of those points. When you look at the maps, that's why they're not all highlighted green, things of that nature. So once you get into a neighborhood, you can essentially take any route you want to get to a certain destination pretty safely. So going back to the West Main Street thing, our goal was to funnel them off West Main. I think we've done that. We were kind of brainstorming people out west. I think he was bringing up Carriage Crossing or Kings Chapel area, how those residents get back into town. We didn't feel that most people would go south all the way down and then cut over. We felt that they would probably go the shortest distance. So if you were in the Kings Chapel neighborhood, you could ride on the proposed trail off of West Main Street all the way to the other side of 75 without being on West Main on our proposed trail if the map was built as we have it. And then you could cut down to the south, or you could go into the Westbrook neighborhood, cut over and grab the bike trail path. So once again, you could get from the west side to the east side without West Main Street if needed. So I wanted to clarify that point. I think he also talked about some traffic laws and maybe trying to prohibit some bikes on the street. We just simply can't do that with the ORC. I just wanted to make that clear that there's provisions in place that we have to allow by the Ohio Revised Code. Bicyclists have the same rights as motorists do on the street, so that's something that we could not address. A point he made also on West Main Street was widening some sidewalks. Unfortunately, in some areas of West Main Street, there's not a lot of right-of-way that we currently have, and some of the houses are built to the roads or very close to the sidewalk, So expanding without obtaining more land, going through costly measures, it would be hard to expand that out to fulfill one of his suggestions. So without going into costly details on that, we would have a hard time following that rule. One of the points that he also talked about was with share roads. We want to point out that they're not necessarily dedicated. Share roads are shared roads with paint to make drivers and bicyclists aware that we're sharing this road. Please recognize the existence of each other. That's what the share road is. A dedicated road would be something opposite than a share road. So I want to make sure that there is a distinction, that people know the difference between those two things. Also, I talked about several other things. The map on I-75, west of I-75, once again, the proposed trail, it does cut up into the north as well. So the whole point of the map was to be somewhere in the city and connect throughout the city, almost you could go in a circle, if you will, but we were trying to pinpoint people to the trail that we currently have, the existing bike trail that we have paved. So we have a lot of connection points to that trail. And that's what we're promoting as well. So if you want to ride on the streets, we want to make you safe. If you want to use the streets to get to the trail, we certainly want to get you there the safest and probably the quickest route we could as well. So those were kind of the points we had. Going down through, I had 3 other points to bring up. That the plan, the one is that this is a fluid plan. Things will change, like any plans. I can almost guarantee you that what you see in front of you probably will not be built for one reason or another. Something will change. We expect to have changes. That's why we're asking for the Complete Streets Plan to be updated every 2 years. Whether it's traffic patterns, development changes, things of that nature, we should note those changes and update our plan. So what we have in front of you is a draft of a plan that we would like to see done, knowing that it will change, and we do expect it to change. So it's not set in stone. I just want to make that pretty clear to the council and anybody at home. So those are kind of points that I had written down to go over. Hopefully I didn't miss any of those. But it was a good comment. We were happy to have it, and hopefully that was a good response to him for it. We did work with other departments in the city to create this plan, and we think it's a very good plan for the city. So I just wanted to open up to any questions you may have.
Just as a point of clarification, did you get back to Mr. Schilling in addressing any of these particulars on a one-on-one or an email or anything like that?
We did not, that I'm aware of, on his point.
He did get a copy of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't know.
He
if
hasn't followed up.
He hasn't
or
followed
asked
up.
any questions or
Okay. I think one of the questions I had about signage and direction of bike paths or direction for bicycles to get off of a particular street, that we were going to address that. I don't want us to get into a plethora of signs all over the place because we have lots as it is. But directional way signage for bicycles indicating particular entrances or exits from neighborhoods or non-traditional areas to go safely.
I'd say those will be looked at as the project comes up. One of the good things about the map is it shows our plan in place. So if we're doing a project, whether it involves ODOT or ourselves, we would take a look at that, knowing that, oh, this is on our Complete Streets policy. Now let's take a look at what we need to address in those areas. And that's really the beauty of the plan, is it brings it to our attention as we're doing our planning ahead of time to address issues as share the road versus dedicated trails versus signage, things of that nature would all be looked at as those projects come up.
And secondly, some of the language further into the Complete Streets study, if you will, about mandatory, permissive language of shall, may, that sort of things. I would hate for us to write things so tied down to shall, instead of being permissive where we did have a fluidity, be able to continue to be fluid with the product instead of demanding that this will occur. And that sort of thing is a concern that I have in the study and their references.
Okay.
Just to clarify once again, I know this is a fluid policy, and I appreciate you bringing that up again. But this is something that would apply to projects that come back to us for approval, with the exception, I believe you said, Mr. Titterington, of maybe simply marking a street or in some way doing signage or something like that. I mean, if it was a construction project, it would be something that comes back to City Council. We would see the design. It would include however it fit into this Complete Street policy. Or maybe you can speak to
You
that.
would see in the packet that you had received during authorization to bid out a project. Yes, you would.
Okay. I mean, to me, it seemed that the concern was, obviously, it centered on West Main and how people might be put onto West Main, or what might be marked on lanes on a very busy street like that. I personally, not to keep harping on Adams Street and Bike Lane, but I hope we don't have any more just lanes like that popping up without us seeing them. Those are the kind of things I got as
Okay.
concerns from
Sure.
both other council members and citizens.
But understand that the street markings and the like are administrative functions, so you're not, whether we have a Complete Streets policy or not, has nothing to do with whether or not you would see those kind of lanes. You know, there's a lot there's a lot of additional information about Adams Street. There's a lot of, there's a lot of thought and discussion and consultation that we go and have with the experts, okay? And there are standards in place, there are ways that we have to do things. And so, as we move forward, if we do have dedicated lanes, first of all, like I said, there are standards that we have to follow. A dedicated bike lane marking that is bike lane only cannot impede into a traveling lane. A traveling lane has to be a minimum width.
Right.
Okay, so we're not going to go from 10 feet down to 6 feet in the vehicle lane just so we can gain dedicated space for a bike lane. That's why fears of us trying to force dedicated bike lanes on Main Street, for example, are frankly unfounded. I mean, we can't do it. It would be unsafe. It doesn't meet standards. We'd have liabilities that we neither want nor need. So, anything that you see as far as construction projects, really the only concern that you should have or question is whether or not we are maybe doubling the size of an estimated cost of a project because we are having to take property to widen the right-of-way, cut into the road and extend utilities because of the right-of-way, and add cubic feet upon cubic feet of asphalt just to accommodate bike lanes. If we were to come to you with that, we would have justification related to traffic safety, bike or pedestrian utilization, including running or walking. We'd have the justification that we would need to, and there would be discussion at the time when we ask you for authorization. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I've just got a few questions. A lot of this is happening in 6th Ward, which is my ward, so I've heard from a couple different groups. The bicyclists, and I'm not a bicyclist, I'm trying to understand where their concerns are coming from. So the big concern there is how do we get from west to east through Carriage Crossing and Stonebridge and all of these places. So it sounds like we're not going to guide them to West Main anymore. We're going to try to get them around, go to Washington and up and over and those types of things. Is that where the map is tough to see?
Well, yeah, and the map's not going to show you, guided footsteps to
Right.
to get them off. It's just going to show the connections because, as Tim
Right.
mentioned, we're not able to tell somebody you can't ride on Main Street.
Right.
All we can say is you will get a ticket if you don't ride safely and according to the traffic laws. So ride at your own risk.
Right.
But
By
that
having
applies
the
to the
map,
vehicles also.
and vehicles as well as, yes, that's absolutely correct. But you'll see on the blown-up map here, that's a lot more legible, I think, that we do show connections into the neighborhoods. Once we get into the neighborhoods, we're not going to have
Right.
lines all over because they're local roads.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think people were thinking that, hey, there's going to be sign, there are going to be, this is the path that you need to take. Obviously, you can't control that. They're going to go wherever they need. The concern was we're filtering people towards West Main Street. So the first was the bicyclists, and then other people are saying that they don't want to lose one of the lanes on right there in front of Walmart or Meijer and those types of areas to go to the dedicated bike like you're saying on Adams Street. So obviously, I don't think that that's ever going to happen. That would just cause congestion and a lot of issues. So those were the two groups that were asking me about some information. Sounds like we've addressed those concerns. Thank you.
Any other council folks have questions? Yes, Mr. Terwilliger.
Being involved with the mayor's bicycle-friendly community, the completion, not completion, but the opportunity to develop this plan is a lot, it's a major concern for our group. And one of the things that I think Tim and his group should be given credit for is there was a lot of planning that goes into this, and we frequently use the word fluid. And fluid is hard to use as a descriptive when you're trying to give a point-by-point demonstration to people as to what you're doing. I think there's been a lot of pre-thought in regards to safety, and then potential modifications or altering of plans in lieu and in consideration of safety by Tim and the group. It was not, just because of time constraints, it probably wasn't able to be given to Jeff and his group as effectively as we would like to, but I have the utmost confidence in the complete street concept that it is not set in stone, that in fact it is very sensitive to being aware of what needs to be modified and changed, and to put no pedestrian, bicyclist, car in a competitive, dangerous situation.
That's always a concern in that probably all of us in council see, or in any of the committees, that folks come to us after the fact, after all of the pre-work that does get done behind the scenes. And I just encourage anyone watching our committees or council meetings to, stay involved with us prior to having to rehear things, present things once, and ask questions early. That's a great point. So.
And it bears repeating and emphasizing that Tim and his staff worked hand in hand with Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. They are our metropolitan planning organization. They are regional experts on the Complete Streets policy. They've got they've got a lot of information available on their website and at their offices. And so and they're very well versed in minimum standards, best practices, and so we followed that. We didn't do this in a vacuum.
Right. Well, I think at the end of the day, if the bicyclists don't feel that something is safe, then they'll go what they feel to be the safest route. Right.
Hopefully.
Right.
Mr. Schweizer, Councilman Schweizer, you were approaching?
John Schweizer, 1210 South Clay Street. Is this something that we have done internally, or did we go to consultants for this?
We did not hire a consultant. We used MVRPC. They helped us with that plan. So, I mean, we are members of that organization, have been for a long time, and so, as I mentioned, they are very well versed in this.
Okay.
They are a Complete Streets entity. They're recognized nationally.
To do this, is there a cost involved with it?
Just the incremental cost. Well, there could be two types of costs. Number one, the incremental costs of making sure the appropriate signage is on the streets, as well as any additional signage that we would want on poles or posts. Or, as I mentioned before, Mrs. Snee asked about any projects that would come up for bidding. There may or may not be a cost associated with bidding a construction project if it involves additional
But there's nothing budgeted
asphalt
for it?
No, sir.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a quick question about the review every 2 years. Would it just, would you anticipate bringing this back to us just as an information piece if there were no recommended changes? Or are we actually envisioning acting on this every 2 years, even if we're in a time period when it doesn't change?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess I'm just asking, how are we going to see it every 2 years?
I think if there are material changes, we definitely would want to
Certainly.
come to talk to you. I wouldn't anticipate that there would be many, if any, changes within a 2-year time period. It's really just to make sure that we are revisiting it on a very timely basis to make sure that we're as up to date on the standards, up to date on the routes, and we've got a good idea of whether the demographics and the migrations have changed.
So I guess maybe if I ask it in a different way, you're anticipating a staff review of this every 2 years with only something coming to council if there's a change proposed?
I would say that's probably correct.
Okay.
We'd probably review it
Just wanted to clarify.
administratively, and then any major changes, we would definitely inform the council. in planning commission?
We do, we complete a similar exercise, although it's every 5 years with the comprehensive plan. Now, that's not a document that the council sees, but it is one that the planning commission approves. And so we will do that every 5 years.
Just curious.
In the, on page 27 of the study that is attached by MVRPC, they have a year of 2011. Is this when this study is from? That is attached to them,
Is the study, are you referring to,
to this particular document that we're looking at?
I believe you're looking at the complete street, the national organizations study.
It's the, well, the headline
Yes.
is Metropolitan Planning Organization Policies, and MVRPC is 2011 that is linked to that.
And it is, so you're looking at which page?
27 in
27.
their document.
And it's in the yellow circle?
It's yellow highlighted. It's 43 of 92 pages in this
There,
document.
okay, I'm getting to it.
And it's under the,
Yes, that is, that was an attachment that we included. That is the national organization that monitors and keeps up with the best practices. That's a nationwide organization that does that. That's not MVRPC, no.
okay. They're just attached to that, or
That's
they're
correct.
receiving
That's-
their information.
That's
from it.
the
Okay.
background information
Got it.
we wanted to provide for you.
Got it, thank you.
And certainly
we're
thank
not
you for
re- we're
providing
not re-
every city in the country that has a
Yeah.
complete streets policy.
That's right. So we're not requesting any additional action or modifications. Just again, wanted to provide some clarification, see if there are any questions that needed to be answered.
And at this point, we are asking the committee to recommend to council to support this.
You already have?
Yes.
So unless you wanted to change that recommendation, we're not asking for any further action
Got it.
from the committee.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from anyone in the audience on the complete streets policies or information? Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, any recommendation to change anything, or just leave it, everything as status quo?
Fine with
Yeah,
that
no change.
recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then we'll just leave things where we are, and thank you for the information provided by staff and the administrative offices. Any other items to come before Streets and Sidewalks Committee that will close us out now?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you.